While the crypto market chased hype coins and meme coins, Stellar and Hedera went to work, on the ground, across the continent, building the future. Stellar just showed up at the Code Africa conference in Kenya, making it clear they're not just talking financial inclusion, they're executing it. Their vision? Seamless retail payments for everyday users, even those without traditional internet access. Meanwhile, Hedera dropped a bombshell. A $1 million Pan-African hackathon, one of the largest ever, designed to fuel Web3, AI, and tokenized asset development across over 20 cities. This isn't just bullish, it's a signal. Both networks are betting big on the next billion users. And they're not doing it in Silicon Valley. They're doing it in Africa. So if you're holding XLM or HBAR, or you're wondering which blockchain is actually building something real, pay close attention. Because what's happening in Africa right now could rewrite the crypto narrative forever. What Stellar's XLM breakout means for its future. For most of 2023, Stellar XLM was flying under the radar. Traders ignored it. Influencers weren't talking about it. And if you brought it up in a conversation, you'd probably get laughed out of the room for still believing in the XRP knockoff. But then something wild happened. XLM didn't just wake up. It exploded. By Q4 of 2024, Stellar's native token surged more than 500%, going from 11 cents to over 63 cents in a matter of weeks. And here's the thing, that wasn't some low-volume pump and dump. That was institutional-grade demand creeping in under the surface. But let's be clear, the price spike wasn't the main event. It was the signal. The real shift was in perception. For years, Stellar lived in XRP's shadow. Both tokens were born from the same DNA, literally. Jed McCaleb, co-founder of Ripple, broke off to start Stellar with a vision not for banks and corporate corridors, but for the unbanked billions who were getting left behind by the global financial system. While XRP fought regulatory battles and struck deals with Wall Street, Stellar was in the trenches, building out payment rails in places most people in crypto didn't care to look at. Latin America, Southeast Asia, and now, Africa. But until now, most investors didn't get it. They saw low price action, low hype, and assumed Stellar was fading. That illusion shattered in late 2024. The political wind shift that sparked the rally. XLM didn't moon in a vacuum. The timing of its rally came right as the broader crypto market started responding to a seismic shift, pro-crypto policies from U.S. political powerhouses. Suddenly, crypto wasn't public enemy number one anymore. It was being courted, protected, and even promoted by some of the biggest names in American politics. And while meme coins and speculative altcoins were riding the news cycle for quick flips, XLM was quietly being accumulated. Smart money started noticing that Stellar wasn't some ghost chain. It had volume, it had users, and most importantly, it had real-world deployments that actually solved problems. The rally wasn't fueled by hype. It was fueled by fundamentals that were finally getting priced in. Africa, Stellar's most strategic move yet. Now let's talk about the real reason institutional investors are suddenly circling Stellar like hawks. Africa. In early 2025, Stellar made its presence felt at the Code Africa conference in Nairobi. This wasn't a casual appearance. Stellar East Africa made it clear they're not just here to talk about crypto ideals, they're here to implement them. Their focus? Seamless retail adoption. We're talking point-of-sale transactions, small-scale merchant payments, and most notably, blockchain-enabled payments that can work without a stable internet connection. That's a game-changer in regions where connectivity isn't guaranteed. And that's not theoretical. Stellar has already laid the groundwork through partnerships with local developers and fintech platforms. They're enabling cross-border money movement for remittance-heavy economies, not just between countries, but between currencies and payment methods that were never interoperable before. This isn't your typical blockchain in Africa pitch. This is infrastructure with boots on the ground. Payment rails, mobile access, regulatory engagement. Stellar is taking the long game seriously. The bigger picture, from underdog to infrastructure layer. Let's zoom out. What Stellar is doing isn't flashy. It's not pumping on TikTok. It's not being shilled on X by influencers with laser eyes. And that's exactly why it's so dangerous in the best way. Because while most of the crypto market chases the next dopamine hit, Stellar is doing what giants like Visa and Swift took decades to build: trust, reach, and interoperability. The XLM breakout in 2024 wasn't just technical. It was philosophical. Investors are finally waking up to the fact that in a world of tokenized assets, global trade, and mobile-first economies, infrastructure matters more than hype. And Stellar? It's quietly becoming that infrastructure in one of the fastest-growing regions on Earth. Why this matters for the next phase of adoption. We're about to enter a phase in crypto where the chains that win won't be the ones with the best memes or the most aggressive speculation. They'll be the ones that get regulatory clarity, build rails for stablecoins and CBDCs, enable cross-border trade for emerging markets, and do it all without requiring users to know they're using blockchain. Stellar checks every single one of those boxes. And as Africa becomes a battleground for blockchain deployment, not just experimentation, XLM may end up being the most underpriced asset in the top 100. Because now that governments, fintechs, and institutions are stepping in, you can bet that the spotlight Stellar just earned in late 2024 is only the beginning. XBAR's Africa Hackathon, a $1 million bet on the future of Web3. While Stellar is busy building payment rails for the unbanked, Hedera is targeting something just as critical: the infrastructure for Africa's future digital economy. And they're not playing small. In May 2025, Hedera announced one of its boldest moves to date: a $1 million Pan-African hackathon, backed by the HBAR Foundation, aimed at accelerating Web3 innovation across the continent. But this isn't just a marketing campaign or a feel-good PR stunt. This is a strategic investment in the future of tokenized economies, AI, and decentralized finance. And unlike most hackathons that stay confined to tech hubs like Nairobi or Lagos, this one spans over 20 cities across the continent, from Kenya to Ghana to South Africa and beyond. This is Hedera planting its flag, not just in Africa, but in the next trillion-dollar market. Why Africa and why now? Let's be clear. Africa isn't a charity case for Hedera. It's a geopolitical advantage. The continent has over 1.4 billion people, with 70% under the age of 30, and mobile phone penetration increasing at lightning speed. Combine that with exploding demand for faster payments, borderless trade, and digital identity, and you get a perfect storm for blockchain implementation. But here's what most people miss. Africa isn't looking for solutions from Silicon Valley. They're building their own. And that's what Hedera is tapping into. The $1 million hackathon is about empowering local developers to build real-world applications using the Hedera network. Whether it's payment systems, decentralized identity, tokenized commodities, or AI-powered logistics, Hedera isn't here to impose technology. They're offering tools, grants, and mentorship, and letting Africa lead. The strategic value of building local ecosystems. You want adoption? Don't just drop a protocol on people and expect them to figure it out. Build with them. That's Hedera's game plan, and it's a smart one. The hackathon is being run in collaboration with some of the region's most active dev communities and tech hubs. Participants will be building on Hedera's EVM-compatible smart contracts and leveraging Hedera Consensus Service, HCS, and Token Service to develop high-throughput, low-fee apps that can scale. And here's what makes this different. Winners won't just get prize money. The most promising projects will get follow-on grants, accelerator support, and potential integrations into regional infrastructure. Hedera isn't just trying to grow dev numbers. They're building an army of local Web3 builders that will stick with the network long-term. This is about ecosystem lock-in, about mindshare, about being first to market with real utility. XBAR's hidden weapon, enterprise-grade compliance. But here's what gives Hedera a serious edge in Africa: governance. Africa is full of potential, but it's also full of regulatory hurdles. Governments are cautious about crypto. Central banks are exploring CBDCs. And financial institutions need platforms that don't raise red flags with international partners. Enter Hedera. Unlike most chains that are decentralized in name but chaotic in practice, Hedera is governed by a global council of enterprises and institutions, including Google, IBM, Standard Bank, and the London School of Economics. This structure gives Hedera institutional credibility, which is a major asset in regions where government partnerships matter. If you're trying to run a blockchain pilot with a national treasury or implement a digital asset platform with a major bank, HBAR is already on the whitelist. That's a massive moat. And as Hedera's presence grows through its Africa hackathon, it's not just onboarding devs. It's building the kind of regulatory-grade infrastructure that can run CBDCs, health records, trade documents, and national registries all on-chain. Why this is more than just a regional play. Let's zoom out again. What Hedera is doing in Africa mirrors what AWS did in the early 2010s when it started building cloud partnerships in developing regions. Back then, most people laughed. Why would you put cloud infrastructure in Kenya? Fast forward a decade, and those early moves gave AWS a near monopoly on emerging markets. Hedera is pulling the same playbook, but for Web3. They're not chasing DeFi TVL rankings or NFT fads. They're planting roots in markets that will define global growth over the next 20 years. And just like with Stellar, what we're seeing here is a signal, not a sideshow. HBAR is no longer just a corporate chain for ESG tokens and carbon credits. It's becoming a continental infrastructure layer for digital identity, tokenization, and financial inclusion. This hackathon is just the opening move. What it means for HBAR holders. If you're holding HBAR, here's the takeaway. This isn't a short-term pump. This isn't influencer-driven hype. This is long-term protocol dominance strategy, and it's being executed through developer adoption, institutional partnership, and regulatory alignment. The $1 million hackathon isn't about finding the next meme coin on Hedera. It's about building the next M-Pesa, the next Alibaba, or the next OpenAI, but powered by HBAR. And when those builders start creating value in local economies, solving supply chain issues, building tokenized payment systems, and digitizing public records, HBAR becomes integral to their success. That's when the tokenomics kick in. That's when enterprise use cases drive network demand. And that's when the price starts reflecting something the market still hasn't fully priced in. Hedera is playing a game 99% of crypto still doesn't understand. Stellar versus Hedera, different paths, same battlefield. Let's be honest. Stellar and Hedera couldn't be more different on paper. One was born out of the ashes of Ripple, forged by a rebel founder obsessed with financial inclusion. The other was built in a boardroom, governed by a council of global conglomerates. One leads with mission, the other leads with structure. But in 2025, their paths are converging, and it's happening in Africa. This isn't just coincidence. This is strategy. Both chains are targeting the most untapped market on Earth, and both are doing it in ways that reflect who they are. So let's break this down. Stellar's ground game, payments and people. Stellar is playing the bottom-up game. Instead of chasing big banks, Stellar focuses on grassroots infrastructure, getting local businesses, mobile wallets, remittance corridors, and microfinance operations to adopt its rails. And guess what? It's working. They've built on off-ramps in Nigeria, partnered with MoneyGram to allow cash-to-crypto transfers in 180 countries, and are now laying the foundation for stablecoin integrations tied to real economic activity. In Africa, that means faster, cheaper, transparent payments, especially in regions where banking infrastructure is weak or non-existent. But it's not just about payments anymore. With Sorbonne smart contracts now live, Stellar has quietly entered the DeFi plus real-world asset tokenization race, giving local builders tools to deploy financial apps that can serve millions without access to traditional banking. Stellar doesn't shout, it builds. And Africa is where that building is starting to show. Hedera's institutional playbook, infrastructure and scale. Now contrast that with Hedera. Hedera isn't knocking on the doors of local kiosks or remittance agents. It's walking straight into government ministries, telecom headquarters, and multinational boardrooms. Its Africa strategy is enterprise first. With its $1 million hackathon, Hedera is saying, let's train the next generation of Web3 leaders right here on our protocol. They're not just building apps. They're building ecosystems. The hackathon is part of a broader move to standardize Hedera as Africa's default Web3 infrastructure layer, from tokenized supply chains to decentralized identity systems and even CBDC pilot platforms. This is the AWS strategy all over again. Capture developer mindshare early, offer high-grade tooling, and integrate directly with public sector systems. And if they pull it off, HBAR could become embedded in national infrastructure, not just apps. Two visions, one continent. So let's zoom out and look at the bigger picture. Stellar is fighting to give individuals power over their money. Hedera is fighting to give institutions a framework for scalable transformation. One's building crypto rails for remittances and DeFi in Nigeria and Kenya. The other's trying to be the operating system for tokenized governance and cross-border data flows. But here's the twist. They're not competing head-to-head. In fact, the real future might require both. Stellar could be the money layer. Hedera could be the compliance and infrastructure layer. One moves fast, the other scales clean. And if both succeed, Africa might end up with a hybrid digital economy powered by both open finance and permissioned utility. For holders, this is the bigger signal. If you're holding XLM or HBAR, this isn't about who's winning today. This is about where the momentum is forming. Because while most of the market is focused on ETF hype, influencer tokens, or Layer 2 drama, both Stellar and Hedera are quietly onboarding the next billion users, not through speculation but through utility. And the African moves are just the beginning. When people look back in 3 to 5 years and ask, how did crypto finally go mainstream outside of the West? The answer won't be because of TikTok meme coins. It'll be because two radically different networks saw the same opportunity and took action before the rest of the world even noticed. Follow the money. Why institutions are finally paying attention to XLM and HBAR. There's an old saying in crypto, retail brings the hype, institutions bring the floor. For most of the last decade, XLM and HBAR were seen as quiet players, doing the hard work, but staying in the shadows while the loudest coins soaked up the spotlight. But in 2025, the tables are turning. The big money is finally circling in, and they're looking at Stellar and Hedera not as speculative assets, but as infrastructure bets. Let's talk about XLM first, utility over noise. Here's what's different now. For years, XLM was dismissed by institutions as that Ripple spinoff with low volume and unclear value accrual. But that narrative is breaking. Why? Because the things institutional capital cares about, compliance, on-chain settlement, interoperability, and audited transparency, are all baked into Stellar's DNA. Stellar was one of the first networks to build compliance-first token standards. It offers near-instant finality, making it perfect for remittances, USDC transfers, and stablecoin arbitrage. And with MoneyGram's cash-to-crypto pipeline fully operational, you've got real-world rails that most blockchains can't even dream of. Institutions don't want hype. They want infrastructure they can trust. And that's why Stellar's 2024 to 2025 push into African remittances, cross-border NGO payments, and tokenized assets via Sorbonne smart contracts is changing the game. When funds and foundations look at XLM now, they're not seeing a trade. They're seeing a platform. Hedera's institutional network was built in, not bolted on. Now let's shift to HBAR. If Stellar had to earn institutional credibility over time, Hedera was born with it. Its governance model is run by a council of global blue-chip giants. Google, IBM, Boeing, Dell, Standard Bank, and more. That's not marketing. That's real boardroom presence. And those names aren't just sitting on the sidelines. Avery Dennison is using Hedera to track supply chains. The South African Reserve Bank has already tested Hedera for interbank settlement. And now with the $1 million Africa Hackathon, Hedera is onboarding a whole new generation of developers building enterprise-grade dApps on top of the network. HBAR is increasingly being viewed as the infrastructure token for corporate crypto, the one you can plug into systems without triggering compliance nightmares. But here's the kicker. Capital flows are catching up. In 2023 and 2024, both HBAR and XLM saw stagnant flows from institutional desks. But starting late 2024, right after the XRP ETF approval and the launch of real-world asset initiatives in Africa, things began to change. Here's what the data shows. Grayscale quietly adjusted their smart contract infrastructure index to increase exposure to HBAR in Q4 2024. A Dubai-based family office disclosed XLM holdings in a portfolio report aimed at impact-focused digital assets. Hedera was included in a pilot project backed by the United Nations Development Program, focused on tracking climate fund transparency in East Africa. This isn't Reddit retail money. This is multi-million-dollar capital seeking long-term utility and, more importantly, regulatory clarity. And guess what? Both Stellar and Hedera have it. Stellar is registered with the SEC through its work with regulated partners. Hedera's governance makes it easier for corporations to engage without worrying about decentralized chaos. That combo is rare. Why this matters for long-term holders. Here's the play. Institutions don't chase 1,000% gains in a week. They want to accumulate quietly, hold long, and wait for real-world usage to drive value. That's what's happening now. Stellar is onboarding users by the millions through remittance pipes and NGO payment rails. Hedera is embedding into national strategies and multinational supply chains. And here's what nobody's talking about. HBAR and XLM aren't just tokens anymore. They're gateways to infrastructure. Assets that enable, not just speculate. As soon as smart money realizes these chains aren't in it for hype but for global economic transformation, they'll want to be early. And right now, they still are. The bigger picture, why XLM and HBAR are building the next financial internet. By now, the patterns are undeniable. Stellar and Hedera are no longer just two niche layer ones quietly working in the background. They're becoming the cornerstones of the next generation financial internet. A future that's decentralized, permissioned where needed, and built for real-world use. Why Africa was the catalyst. You can't talk about the future of crypto without talking about emerging markets. And in 2025, Africa is ground zero. Both XLM and HBAR are investing in the continent not out of charity, but because this is where the real demand lives. Unbanked populations seeking faster, cheaper ways to move money. Governments looking for transparency in aid distribution and cross-border clearing. Businesses needing scalable, compliant rails that don't rely on SWIFT or U.S. intermediaries. When Stellar helps NGOs deliver humanitarian aid using USDC on-chain, or Hedera offers developers $1 million to build local Web3 tools, this isn't just about blockchain adoption. It's about rewiring finance at the roots, starting where legacy systems have failed. And if you think this is just an emerging markets play, think again. Geopolitics are fueling the surge. In a world increasingly polarized by trade wars, CBDCs, and de-dollarization, governments and institutions are looking for neutral settlement layers. Stellar's infrastructure lets stablecoins flow freely, with regulatory guardrails already in place. Hedera's governance makes it an attractive option for intergovernmental pilots that demand compliance. We're entering an era where who settles your payments matters just as much as how fast or cheap it is. And that's why both HBAR and XLM are winning trust. Let's talk about longevity, not just gains. Here's the hard truth. Most coins won't survive the next 5 years. But the ones that will, they're not chasing NFTs or pump-and-dump cycles. They're building utility-first ecosystems that solve real-world problems, quietly, consistently, and with strategic backing. That's why the recent headlines matter. Stellar's price breakout isn't just technical. It reflects a shift in perception. Hedera's $1 million hackathon isn't just a community push. It's a bet on regional developer infrastructure. And both are happening at a time when regulatory clarity is coming, institutions are allocating, and users are onboarding, especially in the global south. This isn't luck. It's the result of years of focused building, partnerships with real-world traction, and tokenomics designed for long-term sustainability. HBAR and XLM holders need to wake up. If you've been holding quietly, watching others chase meme pumps, now's your moment. This is what real adoption looks like. Partnerships with central banks. NGO distribution rails for humanitarian aid. Multinational governance councils. Regulatory safe stablecoin settlements. Developer incentives that actually matter. Most tokens don't have even one of these. XLM and HBAR have all of them. And the market is just beginning to notice. If you're watching this and you hold XLM or HBAR, or you're just starting to realize what's actually happening beneath the hype, here's your next move. Don't just hold. Understand. Follow the partnerships. Track the real-world integrations. Watch where the institutions are going, not where the noise is. Because in the next bull run, the market won't reward the loudest coins. It'll reward the ones quietly building the foundation of the next financial internet. That's why Be Crypto Smart exists, to bring you the narratives the mainstream misses and the data that retail ignores. So if this video opened your eyes, subscribe to Be Crypto Smart, hit the like button, and share this with someone who still thinks crypto is all memes and moonshots. Because XLM and HBAR, they're not hype, they're infrastructure, and that's where the smart money's going.